Hey guys, tonight we're taking a journey back in time, not to the epic battles, but to the long, sleepy aftermath. We're going to follow the heroes of the Trojan War as they try to make their way home. A journey that for many would prove far more perilous than the war itself. Imagine you're right there with them. The salt wind in your face. The creak of the ship's timber a lullaby. This isn't the stuff of Hollywood epics. Not the grand, glorious fights. This is the boring, frustrating, slow-motion disaster that comes after the credits roll. I'll be honest, you probably won't survive this tale of endless wandering, divine wrath, and domestic drama without a nap. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is, so we can all feel a little less alone in this long, strange night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the sharp, wooden splinter of the Trojan horse beneath your fingertips. It's dark inside, a claustrophobic, pine-scented blackness, punctuated only by the nervous breathing of the men around you. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder, armor clinking softly with every shift of weight. The air is thick with anticipation and the smell of fear. The low rumble you feel isn't the thunder of a god, but the sound of the wooden wheels. The creak and groan of the contraption itself as the Trojans, in their hubris, drag it into their city. You can hear the distant, joyous shouts, the triumph in their voices, a sound that, to you, feels like a prelude to a scream. This is the moment, the final, agonizing few hours of a decade-long war. The Trojans truly believe this is a victory offering to Athena. They've fallen for the ruse. Hook, line, and sinker. You're a Greek soldier, one of the best, crammed into this ridiculous oversized toy. You've been told the plan 100 times. Wait for the city to sleep. Then slip out, light a signal, and open the gates for the rest of the Achaean army. Simple, elegant, even. You can almost feel the relief of it. The thought of finally going home. You can hear the celebration outside, the sounds of feasting and music, and a part of you almost feels sorry for them. Almost. Then you remember your fallen friends. The years of fruitless siege. And that feeling evaporates, replaced by cold, sharp resolve. It's a funny thing, isn't it? How in history, the most iconic moments often happen in the quietest, most vulnerable times. Historians still argue whether the Trojan horse was a real wooden structure or a metaphorical military maneuver. A kind of Trojan horse for the historians themselves. A big, wooden distraction from the more complex truth of the war. Some scholars suggest it was a battering ram shaped like a horse. A sort of ancient tank. But for now, you're just a cog in the plan, hoping your helmet doesn't leave a permanent dent in the back of your skull. Hours pass. The shouts fade into a dull hum. Then to nothing. A hushed silence descends, broken only by the soft snores of the exhausted Trojans outside. This is your cue. You feel a hand on your shoulder. A signal from the man next to you. It's Appius, the master craftsman who built this thing. You watch as he, with the silent precision of a surgeon, unlatches the trapdoor. The air is cold and smells of wet earth and night flowers. You slip out, your armor a soft whisper in the darkness. You're standing on the sacred ground of a city you spent 10 years trying to destroy. You move like a ghost through the sleeping streets, the moonlight glinting off the bronze of your greaves. You reach the gates and, with the help of your comrades, begin to unbolt the massive, iron-bound doors. The locks groan, a sound like an old man's sigh, and the gates swing open. You see the faint glow of the torches in the distance. The first glimpse of your waiting army. It's happening. The end is here. You feel a wave of relief wash over you, so powerful it almost makes your knees buckle. The war is finally over. Or so you think. The true, tedious, and very, very boring part of the story is about to begin. Because what happened next was a disaster. A masterclass in how to anger the gods and turn a glorious victory into a prolonged, miserable retreat. This is the start of the end of the heroic age. And it's not with a bang, but with a series of very, very slow, tragic wanderings. You can just about see the faces of the arriving Achaeans now. The triumph in their eyes. And you know, with the kind of foresight that comes from listening to bedtime stories, that they are a little too happy, a little too triumphant, a little too ready to forget the gods. The night air is electric with victory. The Achaean army, finally inside the city walls, is not a disciplined force of professional soldiers, but a ravenous mob. The sounds of celebration have been replaced by the shouts of men, the screams of the defeated, and the clatter of a city being torn apart brick by brick. You're swept up in the chaos, a part of the wave that breaks over Troy. There's a strange mix of exhilaration and emptiness. For 10 years, this city was the single, all-consuming point of your existence. And now it's just a place to be destroyed. You see temples ransacked, altars overturned. You remember your general, Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, calling for a certain respect for the gods. A few of the men even listened. A few didn't. This lack of discipline, this greedy, chaotic disrespect, is the core of the problem. It's the very behavior that will ultimately lead to a decade of divine retribution and endless, boring wandering. And then you witness it. It's not a moment of great heroism, but of profound arrogance. The Achaean fleet's greatest warrior, a man named Ajax the Lesser, a swift and powerful man, drags the Trojan princess Cassandra from the temple of Athena. She is a priestess, a prophetess, and she clings to the statue of the goddess. But Ajax ignores the sacrilege. He violates her right there, in front of the very altar dedicated to the goddess of war and wisdom. The act is so brazen, so disrespectful, that you can almost feel the temperature drop. The air feels charged with a cold, divine fury. You see other soldiers looting, desecrating temples, and committing all manner of crimes that will later be considered utterly unforgivable by the gods. The Achaean army, drunk on victory and fueled by 10 years of pent-up frustration, has forgotten the simple rule of war: you don't punch the gods in the face. Historians still argue whether this was a coordinated act of sacrilege or the inevitable result of a long, brutal siege, but the outcome is the same. The gods are not pleased. But your immediate focus is on Agamemnon, your commander-in-chief. You see him amidst the chaos, looking more like a conquering king than a weary soldier. He has a plan, and it's a terrible one. His greatest prize isn't gold or jewels, but a woman. He has captured Priam's daughter, Cassandra, the same priestess Ajax just violated. Agamemnon, with a chilling lack of concern for the warnings of his men, decides to take her as his concubine. This is the fated woman, the one who saw the future but was cursed so that no one would believe her. And her future, she knew, was filled with tragedy. A funny little tidbit: did you know that the word Cassandra in modern usage now means someone who gives a warning that is not heeded? It's a perfect illustration of how her story has seeped into our very language. A quiet echo of a forgotten myth. You watch as Agamemnon, oblivious to the divine anger he and his men have provoked, prepares for the journey home. He is arrogant, confident in his victory and in his divine favor. He has no idea that the very gods he just angered, the ones he should have been placating, are already setting in motion his own downfall. The fates are weaving a tapestry of misery, and Agamemnon has just handed them the thread. The sack of Troy is a messy, brutal business. You see the city burning, the smoke a black plume against the pale moonlight. It's a sad end to a once great city. As the sun rises, you see the full extent of the devastation. The once proud walls of Troy are now rubble. The city is a smoking ruin, a pyre of hubris and violence. You start to feel the first hints of what's coming. A strange, foreboding wind starts to pick up, a sound like a whisper from the heavens, a soft rustling of leaves that says, "Oh, you're in for it now." And you know, deep in your bones, that this isn't a simple victory march home. This is the first step on a long, long road. The heroic age is not ending with a bang, but with a series of very, very slow, and ultimately boring, disasters. The wind has changed. It's no longer the gentle breeze of a triumphant homecoming, but a squall, a divine temper tantrum expressed in the churning of the sea. You've watched the Achaean fleet gather, a massive armada of 1,000 ships, bobbing on the waves like eager ducks. Agamemnon, the king of kings, stands on the prow of his ship, looking out at the horizon, confident in his power. He has no idea that the very gods of the sea and sky, Poseidon and Athena, are already on the move. They are not happy, not in the slightest. The sacrilege at Troy, the violations, the hubris, it has enraged them. They see the Achaeans not as heroes, but as insolent mortals who have overstepped their bounds. And now, You are sailing into the belly of their fury. The storm hits without warning. The sky turns a bruised, angry purple, and the waves, once gentle swells, become mountains of churning foam. Rain lashes down, not in a gentle shower, but in sheets, so thick you can't see the ship next to you. The wind howls, a demonic shriek that tears at the sails and rigging. The ship lurches and groans, the timbers complaining under the immense strain. You grip the railing, your knuckles white, as the deck pitches violently beneath your feet. This is no ordinary storm. This is a divine correction, a cosmic punishment for a lack of respect. You can feel it in the very air. A cold, unyielding rage that seems to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. The fleet scatters. The meticulously planned journey home turns into a chaotic scramble for survival. Ships are dashed against rocks, their wooden hulls splintering like matchsticks. Men are swept overboard, their desperate cries swallowed by the roar of the wind and the crash of the waves. It's a complete and total disaster. You remember your general, Nestor, a wise old man, saying that a hero's journey is often less about the glory and more about the tedious, painful struggle. He was right. This is the part of the story they don't put on the vases. The boring, miserable part where everyone is just trying not to drown. And this is where the curses begin to take hold. Remember Ajax the Lesser from the last section, the man who violated Cassandra in the Temple of Athena. He, in a final act of hubris, boasts that not even the gods can stop him. In some versions of the story, he even says he can survive the storm without their help. And so, the god Poseidon, the earth shaker, with the help of Athena, strikes. He smashes a bolt of lightning onto the rocks where Ajax's ship is trying to find shelter. The ship shatters, and Ajax is flung into the churning water. He clings to a rock, still boasting, and Poseidon, for the sake of irony and a good show, splits the rock with his trident. Ajax drowns, his body swallowed by the very sea he had so arrogantly challenged. It's a sobering reminder that you just don't mess with the big guys. There's a famous historical tidbit that historians still argue about: the Bronze Age collapse. Around the same time as the traditional dating for the Trojan War, a lot of these Mycenaean palace states just sort of disappear. Was it internal conflict, climate change, or, as the myths suggest, did a series of disastrous events, like the homecoming of the Achaean heroes, weaken them to the point of collapse? It's a debate that's still going on. A bit like arguing whether you left the window open or if a ghost just happened to wander in. For you, right now, the answer is clear. The gods are angry, and you're caught in the middle. The storm rages for days. You're cold, wet, and desperately tired. Your glorious victory at Troy feels like a dream, a distant memory from a lifetime ago. All that matters now is surviving the next wave, the next gust of wind. This is the true end of the Trojan War, not a celebration, but a curse. And for many of the heroes, it's only just the beginning of their long, tedious, and very, very boring journey home. You've survived the storm, barely. The tattered remnants of the Achaean fleet are now scattered across the Aegean Sea, and your ship is adrift. It's masked a splintered memory. But you are not alone. You are on the ship of Menelaus, the king of Sparta, and the very man whose wife, Helen, was the reason for this entire decade-long mess. You're a little surprised to find her here, too. She sits on the deck, her face a mask of weary beauty, watching the horizon with an unnerving calm. You, on the other hand, are a mess. Your clothes are soaked, your armor is rusted, and you've been eating stale bread for what feels like a month. This is the new reality. The glorious homecoming is over, and now it's just a boring, prolonged exercise in survival. Your ship, along with a few others, is no longer heading toward Greece. The storms, the currents, and the fury of the gods have pushed you south, ever south, into the vast, unknown expanse of the sea. You land on strange shores and meet people you've never heard of. You pass by Crete, a real historical place, by the way, with its famous Minoan civilization that was a hub of trade and culture around this time. And yet, there's no time to sightsee. You have to find food, water, and shelter before the next storm hits. This is the tedious reality of ancient seafaring. Not a glamorous adventure, but a constant, grinding struggle against the elements. A funny little tidbit: did you know that in some versions of the myth, Helen never actually went to Troy? The gods swapped her with a phantom, and she spent the whole war in Egypt. Menelaus spent 10 years fighting for an illusion. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what we're all fighting for? Your journey becomes a blur of forgotten lands and minor skirmishes. You land on the coast of Egypt, a place full of wonders and dangers. You're no longer a victorious hero but a shipwrecked vagrant, begging for supplies. You spend years in Egypt, trapped by unfavorable winds. The myth says you even have a brief encounter with Proteus, the old man of the sea. He can change his shape into anything. A fire, a lion, a giant crocodile. You have to hold onto him through all his transformations until he gets bored and agrees to tell you how to get home. It's a bit like trying to pin down a toddler with a sugar rush. You're tired, you're seasick, and you just want the guy to spit out the directions already. Historians still argue whether these long, winding journeys were actual historical events or a metaphorical way to explain why the Mycenaean world fell apart. Did these heroes really wander for a decade? Or was it a way for the Greeks to remember a time of great upheaval and loss? For you, the difference is moot. You're stuck on this ship with Menelaus and the most famous woman in the world. And you're hungry. You listen to Menelaus's quiet, mournful conversations with Helen. They're not the passionate enemies you imagined, but two people who are just tired. They talk about their daughter, Hermione, whom they haven't seen since she was a little girl. You realize that for all the grand, epic sweep of the Trojan War, it all boils down to two very normal people just trying to get home. The years bleed into one another. You lose track of the seasons, the months. Your face is leathery from the sun and your hands are calloused from the ropes. This is the true end of the heroic age, not a great war, but a slow, boring, and utterly miserable decade of wandering. You think about your own home, your own family, and you wonder if they even remember who you are. The thought is more painful than any wound from a Trojan spear. You look at the endless, shimmering expanse of the sea, and you realize that your destination is no longer a physical place, but just home, a destination that seems to be getting farther away with every passing day. While Menelaus is busy having his 10-year, sea-based pity party, the true star of the show, Odysseus, is just getting his own long, boring journey started. You're one of his crew, a member of his elite, hand-picked fighting force from the island of Ithaca. You're not a big, famous hero, just a regular guy who signed up for a 10-year war and is now stuck in what feels like an endless maritime traffic jam. Your ship, the last of Odysseus's 12 ships, is a sturdy, single-masted vessel, nothing fancy. You've just left the burning ruins of Troy, and unlike the rest of the Achaeans who got scattered in the first big storm, you managed to dodge the worst of it. You feel a small sense of triumph. You're heading home. This is going to be easy. Right? Wrong. So wrong. You've got a captain, Odysseus, who is cunning and smart, but also a bit of a show-off. He's the guy who came up with the whole Trojan horse thing. So he's feeling pretty good about himself. This is a crucial bit of his personality. He's a bit full of himself. And that, as you'll soon see, is going to be a problem. The gods, you see, don't really like it when mortals take too much credit. This is a very common theme in Greek myths. A funny little tidbit you'll learn the hard way. It's called hubris, and it's a one-way ticket to a very bad time. Your first stop is the island of the Cicones. The Cicones are a real people, a Thracian tribe from the region of Ismaris. A little bit of a historical fact to help you feel grounded in all this chaos. You and your crew, feeling pretty heroic, decide to raid their coastal town. It's a typical military operation. You land, you sack the city, you take the women and the wealth. But then, you and your shipmates get a little too comfortable. You sit down to feast and celebrate, ignoring Odysseus's warnings to get back to the ship. You're drinking wine, you're eating roasted meat, and you're feeling pretty good. This is the part where you realize that a lot of what happens in these stories is just a result of guys being kind of dumb. The Cicones, meanwhile, have had time to rally their inland allies. They're not just a bunch of coastal fishermen. They're a warrior tribe, and they come rushing down to the coast, their forces far outnumbering yours. The Greeks, groggy and hungover, have to fight a desperate battle just to get back to their ships. You lose 6 men from each of the 12 ships. That's 72 men, gone in a single, stupid afternoon. You're no longer a victorious army. You're a group of men who just barely escaped with their lives. Historians still argue about the true nature of these kinds of raids. Was it a common practice for returning soldiers to raid local settlements? Or is this a literary device meant to show the dangers of the journey? For you, the answer is simple. You just lost your friends because you were celebrating too soon. The wind, which was once a kind, favorable breeze, turns into a gale, and you're blown far, far off course. Your path home is no longer a straight line, but a meandering, unpredictable journey filled with dangers you can't even imagine yet. The ocean, which was once your path home, is now a labyrinth. The sun beats down on your face, and you watch the waves crash against the side of the ship. The endless, repetitive sound, a kind of cruel lullaby. You wonder what your family is doing. You wonder if they've heard about the fall of Troy and are waiting for you. A triumphant hero. You have no idea that your journey is only just beginning, and that you are about to sail into a world of monsters, magic, and bad decisions. The storm has pushed you and the remaining crew of Odysseus so far off course that you're in a different world entirely. The sea is no longer the familiar, deep blue of the Aegean but a hazy, shimmering expanse. You're exhausted, your skin is raw, and you're just looking for a place to rest. You finally spot land, a beautiful, sun-drenched island covered in strange, intoxicating flowers. This seems like a stroke of luck, a pleasant reprieve from the chaos and misery. But as you'll soon find out, in this new, mythical world, nothing is as it seems. You and a few of your crewmates land on the beach. You see a few inhabitants, a peaceful-looking people who offer you a strange, sweet fruit. It's the lotus flower. You're starving, so you eat it without a second thought. And that's when things start to get weird. The moment the fruit touches your tongue, a wave of blissful, hazy contentment washes over you. The fear, the exhaustion, the memory of your friends who died fighting the Chacones, it all fades away. You forget about the storm, about your home in Ithaca, about your wife and children. All you want to do is eat more of this delicious, wonderful fruit and lie in the sun forever. This is the ultimate vacation, a one-way ticket to a permanent state of zen. A funny little tidbit. The lotus eaters are thought by some scholars to be a reference to a real plant, possibly a type of poppy, which has a sedative effect. So, you're basically high, and you're not alone. The other crewmates who ate the fruit are also lying on the beach. Their faces slack with a dreamy smile. They're happy, but they're useless. Odysseus, being the smart guy he is, wisely tells his crew not to touch the fruit. He sees the effect it has on the others and knows this is a trap. A danger far more subtle and insidious than any sea monster. He has to use force to get you and the other lotus eaters back to the ship. He ties you up, struggling and complaining, and drags you back on board. You're kicking and screaming, not out of pain, but because you just want to go back to your peaceful, lotus-induced stupor. It's a surreal experience, being a part of a fight where you're just trying to get back to a state of being completely and utterly checked out. You can't imagine why anyone would want to leave such a perfect, beautiful place, but Odysseus knows better. He understands that your mind is the most important part of your journey. And if you lose that, you lose everything. This whole episode is a subtle warning, a kind of foreshadowing of the long, tedious mental and emotional battles to come. The most dangerous enemies aren't always big, scary beasts with a lot of teeth. Sometimes, they're just a soft, beautiful flower that makes you forget your purpose. The Chacones battle was about physical survival, but this one is about the will to endure. Historians still argue whether this part of the story represents a real historical event or a moral allegory about the dangers of giving up and losing sight of your goals. For you, the answer is simple. Your head is pounding and you feel like you just woke up from a very, very long dream. You look around at your crewmates who also ate the fruit, and you all share a look of sheepish, embarrassed understanding. You narrowly escaped a fate far worse than death, a life without purpose. A life where you just don't care. With the lotus eaters back on board, you set sail again. The island fades into a distant memory, a blissful mirage you'll never quite forget. The wind is back in your sails, and you're heading for a new, unknown land. You've survived the first real test of this long, boring journey, but you have no idea what's waiting for you just over the horizon. It's going to be a lot more boring, and a lot more dangerous. The wind has brought you to a new island, a place of sheer cliffs and dark, jagged mountains. This is the land of the Cyclops, a race of one-eyed giants. You don't know this yet. Of course, you just see a strange, barren landscape, not a single farm or cultivated field in sight. The air is heavy with the smell of sheep and something else. Something primal. Odysseus, ever cautious, decides to take a small scouting party, including you, to explore a large cave you spotted from the shore. This is the ultimate mistake. A bit of poor judgment that will haunt you for the rest of your long, boring journey. You walk into the cave, and it's a mess. There are cheese and milk everywhere, and pens full of sheep and goats. It smells earthy and, well, like a lot of animals. You and the other men, always thinking with your stomachs, want to take a few things and get out of there. You've been living on stale bread for weeks, and this is a feast. But Odysseus, in a rare moment of dumb luck or divine inspiration, decides to wait for the owner to come home. He wants to meet the giant and see if he's a hospitable type, a host who might offer a gift of friendship. This is an ancient Greek custom. A little historical tidbit for you. The concept of xenia, or guest friendship, was a sacred bond of hospitality between a host and a guest. It was a rule, a big deal. The Cyclops, as you'll soon learn, doesn't subscribe to the rules. The owner of the cave arrives, a one-eyed brute named Polyphemus. He's huge, a living mountain of muscle and a one-eyed wonder. A quiet aside. You know how artists always depict the Cyclops with one eye in the middle of his forehead? That's not a historical fact, but a Greek mythic trope. Historians still argue whether the myth of the Cyclops was inspired by the discovery of ancient elephant or mammoth skulls, where the central nasal cavity could be mistaken for a single, large eye socket. It's a fun thought to ponder while you're about to be eaten. Polyphemus rolls a massive boulder over the entrance, trapping you inside. He ignores your pleas for xenia, for hospitality. He laughs, a booming, terrible sound, and then, in a casual, horrifying moment, he grabs two of your fellow crewmen and smashes their heads against the cave walls. He eats them, bones and all, and then lies down and goes to sleep. You're paralyzed with fear. This is the opposite of a heroic quest. This is just a tedious, terrifying wait to see if you're next on the menu. The next day, Polyphemus eats two more of your friends. You watch, stomach churning with a mix of fear and nausea, as he goes about his daily routine. It's a very mundane kind of horror. It's not a glorious battle. It's just waiting to be eaten. It's boring, and it's awful. Odysseus, meanwhile, is thinking. He's the smart guy, remember? He knows he can't just kill the Cyclops, because he's the only one strong enough to move the boulder from the entrance. So he comes up with a plan. That evening, he gets the giant drunk on wine he brought from the ship. When Polyphemus asks for his name, Odysseus, in a stroke of cunning, replies, "My name is Nobody." A silly, cheeky thing to say, but a brilliant move. When the giant passes out, you and the remaining crew grab a sharpened olive tree steak that you've been preparing all day. You heat it in the fire and, with a silent, synchronized effort, you jam it into Polyphemus's one eye. He wakes up screaming, a sound that rattles the very rocks of the cave. The other Cyclops on the island hear his cries and come running. "Who has harmed you, Polyphemus?" they shout from outside the cave. And the giant, in his drunken, painful confusion, screams back, "Nobody, nobody has harmed me." The other Cyclops, in a moment of pure, beautiful comedic timing, think he's fine and leave. And you're still trapped, but you're alive. For now, the true escape is still to come. And it's going to be just as long and just as boring. You've escaped the cave of the Cyclops, but just barely. You're under the ship's hull, clinging to the belly of a sheep, as Polyphemus, blinded and enraged, pats down the wool of his flock, looking for you. You feel his massive, fleshy hands pass inches from your face, and you hold your breath, your heart pounding a drum solo against your ribs. It's a very undignified way to escape, but it works. You and the rest of the surviving crew make it back to the ships. And as you sail away, Odysseus, in a final moment of triumphant stupidity, shouts his real name and address back at the island. He tells the one-eyed giant that it was Odysseus, son of Laertes, from Ithaca, who blinded him. This, of course, is a terrible, terrible idea. Polyphemus, a son of the sea god Poseidon, immediately calls on his father to curse Odysseus. You, of course, are now also cursed by association. This is the ultimate example of a hero letting his ego get in the way of his good sense. Your next stop is the floating island of Aeolus, the keeper of the winds. He's a kind and hospitable host. A nice break from the man-eating giant. He gives Odysseus a gift. A bag containing all the winds of the world. Tied up neatly with a silver cord. He only leaves out the west wind, a gentle breeze that will blow you all the way home to Ithaca. This is a dream come true. You can almost taste the familiar air of your homeland. You can see the faces of your family. You're so close. For 9 days and 9 nights, you sail, watching the shores of Ithaca grow closer and closer. But the crew, being men who have been through a lot of garbage, get a little suspicious. What's in that bag? Is it gold? Jewels? A magical sword? They start to whisper. They think Odysseus is hoarding a treasure for himself. You can see their point. This is a very valuable looking bag. And Odysseus has been a bit secretive. This is a classic example of human nature getting in the way of a good thing. A little historical fact for you. These sailing myths often contain kernels of truth. Like the trade winds that sailors would have to understand to navigate long distances. The myth of Aeolus is a bit of a personification of that ancient meteorological knowledge. As Odysseus falls asleep from exhaustion, the crew, in a moment of utter boredom-fueled curiosity and greed, opens the bag. All the winds of the world rush out in a howling, chaotic storm. Your ships are blown back to the island of Aeolus, who, now realizing the crew's foolishness, refuses to help again. He's had enough of your kind. You can't blame him, really. So you're back at square one. And this time, it's entirely your own fault. You sail on, with no wind and a whole lot of regret. Your next stop is the island of Circe, a powerful and beautiful sorceress. She's the daughter of Helios, the sun god. A strange little tidbit. The ancient Greeks sometimes used myths to explain natural phenomena. And Circe's magic may have been a way to understand the properties of certain plants or herbs. Her island is a surreal place, filled with wild beasts that are strangely docile. A scouting party, including you, goes to her house. She invites you in and offers you a meal. You are, of course, ravenous, but she slips a potion into your food. And when you eat it, you are instantly transformed into a pig. Your mind is still your own, but your body is now a smelly, oinking mess. You're forced into a pigsty, along with the rest of your men. Odysseus, who was not with your party, is warned by the god Hermes. He gets a special herb that makes him immune to her magic. He confronts Circe and forces her to turn you all back into men. She does, and for a year, you stay on her island. It's not an adventure, it's just a very long, boring, and kind of nice break. You eat, you rest, you make repairs. Historians still argue whether this long stay on Circe's island represents a pause in the narrative for Odysseus to mature, or a simple way to fill in the long, empty years of the journey. For you, it's just a year of not having to worry about being eaten by a cyclops. But the peace doesn't last. The journey must continue. The year on Circe's island, a little slice of paradise with a touch of magic, has been a welcome change of pace. You've eaten well, slept on soft beds, and your body, once battered and bruised by the sea, is now strong and ready. But the memory of your home still haunts you. You've seen your leader, Odysseus, grow restless, and you know the time has come to leave. But where to? Circe, in a move that's both helpful and utterly terrifying, tells Odysseus he cannot go home directly. He must first go to the land of the dead, the underworld, to consult the blind prophet Tiresias. So you set sail again. Not toward the sunrise, but into the sunset, toward the western edge of the world, where the land of the living ends and the realm of shadows begins. This is the least fun trip you've ever been on. The air is cold and smells of decay. You land on a desolate shore, a place shrouded in mist and fog. This is the underworld, a place of myth and legend that you never thought you'd see. You follow Odysseus to a place where a stream of black water, a river of pain and suffering, flows. You watch as he sacrifices a ram and a ewe, and the blood, black and thick, pools on the ground. The spirits of the dead, drawn by the smell of the blood, begin to emerge from the darkness. They are silent, ghostly figures, and they float around you like smoke, their eyes empty and sad. This is not the glorious reunion with the fallen heroes you might have imagined. It's a quiet, somber moment, a testament to the sheer, Boring reality of death. You see the ghost of Elpenor, one of your crewmates who fell off Circe's roof and broke his neck in a drunken, clumsy fall. He begs Odysseus to go back to Circe's island and give him a proper burial. This is a very common motif in ancient Greek burial rituals. A little historical tidbit for you. The proper burial of the dead was of paramount importance. A soul without a proper burial could not cross into the underworld and was doomed to wander the earth for eternity. Then you see the spirits of the great heroes of the Trojan War. You see your fallen comrades, the men who died in the sack of Troy. And you see the ghost of your old commander, Agamemnon. He is a sad, angry figure, still bleeding from the wound that killed him. He tells Odysseus a shocking tale of betrayal and murder. A preview of what we'll get to later. He warns Odysseus not to trust his wife, not to trust anyone. His advice is a bitter pill to swallow. A funny little aside. One of the more depressing things about the underworld is that everyone is just boring. They just want to tell you their sad story. It's like a really depressing, ancient version of a dinner party where everyone just complains about their lives. Finally, the ghost of the prophet Tiresias appears, drinking the blood of the sacrifice so he can speak. He is a truly ancient figure, and he is a historical fact of sorts. The idea of a blind prophet who can see the future is a powerful archetype found in many ancient cultures. He tells Odysseus his future. He tells him that his journey will be long and full of suffering. He tells him that he will face the wrath of Poseidon, the sea god, who is still angry about the whole blinding the Cyclops thing. But he also tells him that if he can manage to not eat the cattle of the sun god Helios, he will eventually get home. He warns him that he will return to a house full of suitors, men who have taken over his palace and are trying to marry his wife. And finally, he tells him that even after he kills the suitors, he will have one more journey to make. It's a lot to take in. And it's a very depressing laundry list of things that still need to go wrong before you get to go home. Historians still argue whether the idea of a hero's descent into the underworld was a literary device meant to show the hero's self-discovery or if it was a reflection of actual religious beliefs about death and the afterlife. For you, it's just a long, boring, and very cold trip that you just want to get over with. You've had enough of ghosts and sadness. You're ready to get back to the living. And you're ready to face the next tedious challenge on this long journey home. You've survived the underworld. You've heard the prophecies. You've spoken with the dead. And you have a new, very depressing set of instructions to get home. Your ship, a tiny speck on the vast sea, is heading, finally, in the right direction. You have a long, boring list of tasks to complete. But the most important one, the one that is now a constant hum in the back of your mind, is the fate of your home. You've heard Tiresias's warning. Your palace is overrun with suitors, men who want to marry your queen, Penelope, and take over your kingdom. You don't know what to expect, but you know it's not going to be easy. You've finally made it. The rocky coast of Ithaca appears on the horizon, and you feel a wave of emotion wash over you, relief, fear, and a sense of profound exhaustion. This is it. This is your home. You and the few remaining crew, just a dozen of you now, are a tattered, weathered lot, barely recognizable as the proud men who sailed away a decade ago. Odysseus, ever the master of disguise, has a plan. He knows he can't just walk back into his palace and announce his return. He needs to assess the situation, to see who is loyal and who is not. This is a very real, very boring, but very necessary part of any homecoming after a long absence. He's no longer a glorious hero, but a spy in his own kingdom. The first thing you do is land on a secluded beach. You watch as Odysseus, with the help of the goddess Athena, is magically disguised as an old beggar. It's a surreal thing to watch your king, the great Odysseus, transform from a battle-hardened hero into a frail, old man. A little historical fact for you. The concept of gods and goddesses directly intervening in human affairs was a very real part of ancient Greek life. They weren't just distant deities, they were active, often capricious, participants in the daily drama of a person's life. You, meanwhile, are left to guard the ship and the treasure you've accumulated. The waiting is the worst part. You're so close, and yet you're stuck, unable to see your family, unable to confirm that everything is okay. You just have to wait, and wait, and wait some more, and while you wait, you can't help but think about what's happening back at the palace. The suitors, 100+ strong, or living off Odysseus's wealth, eating his food, and making a general nuisance of themselves. They are arrogant and lazy, and they represent a kind of decay, a rot that has set in during Odysseus's long absence. You hear, through the local grapevine and the shepherd Eumaeus, the heartbreaking tale of Penelope's resistance. For years, she has held them off, promising to choose a new husband once she finishes weaving a burial shroud for her father-in-law. Laertes, every day, she weaves, and every night, she secretly unravels her work. A quiet, defiant act of loyalty, a quirky little tidbit. The phrase, Penelope's web, has become a modern idiom for a task that is never-ending or a clever way to stall for time. It's a testament to her intelligence and resilience. Historians still argue whether Penelope's story represents the ideal of a loyal wife in ancient Greece or a reflection of the power women could wield in a patriarchal society through cunning and wit. For you, it's just a story of a woman who is tired, but not broken. You also learn about Telemachus, Odysseus's son. He was just a baby when Odysseus left, and now he's a young man, desperate to find his father and restore his family's honor. The suitors mock him, but he's determined. He's a little green, a little naive, but he's got his father's spirit. You feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this long, boring journey is finally, truly coming to an end. While you wait by the ship, a silent sentry, the story of Odysseus's son, Telemachus, is finally moving. You learned he's been searching for his father, and now you're about to hear his story. It's a tragic, tedious tale of a young man coming of age in a household full of freeloaders. For the last few years, Telemachus has been living in the shadow of the suitors, 100+ arrogant men who treat his home like a personal buffet. A little historical fact for you. The suitors' behavior would have been a massive violation of the social and moral code of ancient Greece. They weren't just rude, they were an insult to the gods and a stain on the honor of the entire family. Telemachus, a young man of maybe 20, is tired of it. He's been mocked and dismissed. And he finally gets a little pep talk from the goddess Athena, in disguise. Of course, that gives him the courage to act. He calls an assembly of the men of Ithaca, the first one in 20 years, and he lays out his case. He tells them, with a mix of defiance and youthful anger, that the suitors are ruining his household and disrespecting his mother. But the assembly, full of men who are either afraid of the suitors or secretly siding with them, does nothing. It's a frustrating, boring exercise in ancient Greek politics, where nothing gets done and everyone just talks. So, Telemachus decides to take a more direct and dangerous path. He sets off on his own, on a quest to find news of his father. He sails to the mainland, a journey that for him is a huge, dangerous adventure, though for you, a seasoned veteran of the Trojan War, it feels a little bit like a trip to the grocery store. He first goes to Nestor, the wise old man you remember from Troy. Nestor is now a content, happy king, enjoying his old age and his family. He tells Telemachus all the gossip and all the boring details about the homecoming of the other heroes. He talks about Menelaus, the one who ended up in Egypt for a decade, and Agamemnon, the one who had a very bad homecoming, which you'll hear about soon. It's a little bit of a tedious history lesson, but it's a necessary one. It helps Telemachus understand the world he lives in and the great, boring drama his father is a part of. Next, Telemachus goes to see Menelaus and Helen, who, as you know, finally made it home after their decade-long, boring odyssey. They are happy and prosperous. But there's an undercurrent of sadness. They tell Telemachus more stories, more details about the war, and about his father's fame. They give him gifts and promise to help him. A quirky little tidbit. When Telemachus first meets Helen, she recognizes him right away. This is because he looks so much like his father, Odysseus. It's a bit of a nice, heartwarming moment in an otherwise depressing story. Historians still argue whether Telemachus's journey is a separate narrative designed to give the audience a contemporary view of the world and a way to build tension, or a literal part of the mythic tradition. For you, it's just more waiting, but it's a vital part of the story. A necessary delay before the final act. It builds the tension, it shows the stakes, and it proves that the desire for your king's return is not just something you feel, but something that the whole of Ithaca is yearning for. You sit on the beach, watching the waves, and you feel the weight of all these boring, Tragic events, all converging on this one. Quiet beach, the wait is almost over. And when it's over, things are going to get very, very ugly. The wait is finally over. Odysseus has returned to the palace in his disguise. And you, still a faithful member of his small crew, have been given your own specific, boring tasks. The palace is an utter zoo. The suitors are a loud, arrogant, and constantly hungry mob. They are feasting, playing games, and generally acting like the worst house guests in the history of the world. Odysseus, still disguised as a beggar, walks among them, a ghost in his own house. He's insulted, he's mocked, and he's even hit with a footstool by one of the worst of the bunch. Antinous, you watch from a distance, your blood boiling, but you know the plan. You have to be patient. The final, climactic act of this long, boring drama is about to begin. Queen Penelope, tired of waiting, tired of the suitors, and sensing that the time for a decision has come, proposes a contest. It's a game, but it's one with very high stakes. She brings out Odysseus's old, magnificent hunting bow. This bow is special. Only Odysseus can string it. She challenges the suitors to string the bow and shoot an arrow through the holes of 12 axe heads lined up in a row. It's a seemingly impossible task. A bit of a last-ditch effort to stall for time. One by one, the suitors try. They are strong, arrogant men, but the bow is as stiff and unyielding as a piece of iron. They grunt and sweat and struggle, but they can't even come close. It's a very satisfying, very boring spectacle. The air is thick with frustration and failure. You watch as these men, who have been so arrogant and so disrespectful, are humbled by a simple piece of wood. A little historical fact for you. The bow was not just a weapon in ancient Greece. It was a symbol of a man's strength and honor. This contest is not just a game. It's a test of who is worthy to take Odysseus's place. As the suitors fail, Odysseus, still in his beggar's disguise, asks if he can try. The suitors laugh at him. A feeble old beggar, trying to string the bow of the great Odysseus? It's the punchline of a very long, very depressing joke. But Telemachus, his son, a young man who has finally found his courage, insists. He tells the suitors that it's his right to let the beggar try. A quirky little tidbit. The bow contest is a kind of mythological version of a reality show talent competition, where the true star is revealed at the very end. Odysseus takes the bow. He inspects it carefully, as if it's an old friend he hasn't seen in a long time. The suitors are still laughing, still mocking him, but then, with a quiet, confident grace, he strings the bow. The sound it makes is like the cry of a swallow. A small, beautiful sound that echoes in the great hall. The suitors' laughter dies in their throats. They are silent, their faces a mask of fear. Odysseus, without a word, takes an arrow and fits it to the string. He draws it back, aims, and releases. The arrow flies true, a silver streak in the air, and passes cleanly through the 12 axe heads. The silence in the room is deafening. A funny little joke. What do you call a suitor who just saw the beggar string the bow? A very, very nervous man. Historians still argue whether the bow contest is a literary trope borrowed from an older tradition or an original creation of the poet. For you, it's the moment of truth. The game is over, the disguise is off, and the slaughter is about to begin. The long, boring wait is over, and the bloody, final act of this story is about to unfold. The silence is shattered. The bow, once a symbol of a contest, is now a weapon of a different kind. You watch from your hiding place as Odysseus, in a single, fluid motion, takes off his beggar's rags and reveals his true identity. He is the warrior king, the man who brought down Troy, and he is home. He shoots another arrow, this time into the throat of the worst of the suitors, Antinous, who is in the middle of drinking from a cup of wine. He falls, and the cup, now filled with his blood, shatters on the floor. It's a shocking, brutal, and very, very satisfying moment. The slaughter has begun. The suitors, caught completely by surprise, are a terrified, disorganized mess. They are 100 against 3, Odysseus, his son Telemachus, and the loyal swineherd Eumaeus. But the odds are not in their favor. The hall is locked, and the weapons are all in your hands. You and a few other loyal servants, who have been hiding in the shadows, reveal yourselves, and the slaughter begins in earnest. It's a grim, bloody, and very messy business. The air is filled with the shouts of men, the clash of swords, and the sickening thud of a body hitting the floor. There's no glory in this fight. It's not a battle between equals, it's a brutal, one-sided massacre. You, a veteran of a decade-long war, have seen a lot of death. But this is different. This is a final, merciless reckoning, a purging of the rot that has infested the palace for a decade. The suitors, in their fear and desperation, plead for their lives, but Odysseus is a cold, unforgiving force of nature. He remembers the years of insults, the disrespect to his family, and the way they have drained his wealth. He is not a man to be trifled with. There is one suitor, a poet named Phemius, who pleads for his life, claiming he was a musician and not a fighter, and that he was forced to be there. Telemachus, in a surprising act of mercy, intervenes and saves him. This is a rare moment of grace in a very bloody and merciless scene. It's a little historical fact for you. The role of the Eidos, or singer, was a respected and important part of ancient Greek society, and saving one was an act of cultural significance. The slaughter goes on for what feels like an eternity. The floor of the great hall is slick with blood. The bodies of the suitors are piled in a gruesome heap. When it's all over, the hall is silent, save for the sound of your own ragged breathing. You and the others look at the carnage, and you feel a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. A quirky little tidbit. The suitors' deaths are often seen as a symbolic cleansing, not just of the palace but of the heroic age itself. They represent a decay of old values, a kind of moral corruption that needed to be violently purged. Historians still argue whether this bloody scene is a reflection of the ancient Greek belief in a just and vengeful god or a later addition to the story to make it more dramatic. For you, it's just a job that needed to be done. You've had a long, long day, but the work is not yet finished. The bodies have to be disposed of. The hall has to be cleaned. And the final, most boring task of all has to be done. You have to convince the one person who still doesn't believe that Odysseus is really home, his wife, Penelope. While you're cleaning up the bloody mess in the Great Hall, let's take a little detour. Remember Agamemnon, the king of kings, the one who sacked Troy and took Cassandra as his prize. His story, and his homecoming, is a very different kind of boring tragedy. His journey home was not a long, boring odyssey, but a quick, fatal sprint to his own demise. He sailed home, triumphant and arrogant, and he thought he was going to be welcomed as a hero. He was wrong. His wife, Clytemnestra, had a few things to say about that. While Agamemnon was off fighting a war for 10 years, she was busy. She took a new lover, Aegisthus, Agamemnon's cousin. She was also furious with Agamemnon for a few things. A major one being the fact that he sacrificed their daughter, Iphigenia, to the gods to get a fair wind to Troy. It's a bit of a touchy subject. Really. So, she's not exactly thrilled to see him. Agamemnon arrives home, and he's happy. He's oblivious to the cold reception from his wife. He walks into his palace, a man who has conquered the greatest city in the world, only to be met by a silent, cold woman. A little historical fact for you. The ancient Greeks had a very specific, and often tragic, view of fate and vengeance. Clytemnestra's actions were seen as a just, if bloody, retribution for the death of her daughter. The scene of his death is a quiet, domestic one, and that's what makes it so chilling. He's in his bath, vulnerable and naked, and his wife and her lover, Aegisthus, murder him with an axe or a sword. Depending on which version of the story you read, it's a very unheroic death. No glorious battle, no heroic last stand, just a man, killed by his own family. In his own home. It's a quiet, personal tragedy that feels so much more brutal because it's so close. It's not a war, it's a family drama with a very, very sharp axe. A quirky little tidbit. Agamemnon's son, Orestes, would eventually return to avenge his father's death. A whole other boring, tragic story that we won't get into tonight. But it shows you that in these myths, the cycle of violence just keeps going. Historians still argue whether the story of Agamemnon's death is a mythic representation of real political assassinations in the Mycenaean world or a metaphor for the breakdown of the family unit. For you, it's just a sad, depressing story of a man who fought a long war, only to lose the one that mattered most at home. He won the grand, epic battle, but he lost the quiet, domestic one. It's a sobering reminder that sometimes, The greatest dangers are not on the battlefield, but in your own house. You've cleaned up the mess in your own great hall. And you know, deep in your bones, that you're one of the lucky ones. The heroic age is ending, not with a roar of triumph, but with a series of quiet, and very, very boring, murders. The dust has settled, the suitors are dead, and the hall is clean. But the final, most boring part of this long, long journey is still to come. You've watched Odysseus win the fight, but now he has to win the peace. The greatest hero of the Trojan War has to convince his own wife, Penelope, that he is really who he says he is. It's a quiet, tender, and very, very boring scene. Penelope, for all her cleverness and loyalty, is still a woman who has been without her husband for 20 years. She is wary, she is tired, and she has seen a lot of things. She doesn't believe him at first. She thinks it's a trick, a divine ruse, or that this man, who looks so much like her husband, is an imposter. This is the moment where Odysseus, the master of disguise and deception, has to be completely and utterly honest. A little historical fact for you. The final reunion between Odysseus and Penelope is often seen as the moral climax of the entire epic. The triumph of love and loyalty over all the long, boring trials of the journey. So, Penelope, in a final test, tells her servant to move their bed out of the room. This is a cruel, clever trick. Odysseus, in a moment of surprise, objects. He tells her that their bed cannot be moved. He built it himself, from the trunk of an ancient olive tree that grew in the middle of their bedroom. It's a part of the house, a part of the very foundation of their home. A quirky little tidbit. The bed is not just a piece of furniture. It's a symbol of their life together, a living part of the home that only they know about. Penelope, upon hearing this, finally believes him. She knows this is a secret that only her real husband could know. She runs to him, and they embrace. Their reunion a quiet, tearful, and very, very human moment. It's a perfect ending to a long, boring story of gods, monsters, and endless wandering. It's not a battle. It's not a great speech. It's just two people who have been through a lot, finally finding each other again. Historians still argue whether the olive tree bed is a symbol of Odysseus's rootedness to his home and family, or if it's a clever way for the poet to give the audience a final, satisfying answer. For you, it's just a beautiful ending to a long, long night. You've seen a lot of things. You've been through a lot of garbage. But you've finally, truly, come home. The stories of the hero's homecoming are over. The heroic age, the age of great kings and epic battles, is slowly, quietly, and very, very boringly coming to an end. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? That a grand, glorious era ends not with a bang, but with a series of domestic tragedies and quiet, human reunions. It's a testament to the fact that for all the glory of war, the real story, the one that really matters, is the journey home. Now, as you fade into sleep, let the final, peaceful images of this long journey settle over you. The quiet murmur of the wind, the gentle rocking of the waves, the soft hum of the fan in your room. Feel the warmth of the bed and the coolness of the air. The heroes have come home, and so have you. The stories have all been told, and the long, long night is finally, truly over. Let the final image be of a quiet, peaceful home, a place of rest after a long, long day. There's nothing more to do, nothing more to hear. The journey is over. The war is done. You are safe. And now, you can finally sleep.